Right. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the webinar conducted by TCS Online in lieu of the operational case study happening in February 2022. And this webinar is conducted with the aim of taking you through the areas highlighted by the examiner, as well as taking you through the content pertaining to the operational case study. So before we start the session, let me lay down some rules with regards to how I'm gonna conduct this session. So if you have any questions when whilst going on with this session, if you come up with any questions, please jot it down, or you can put it as, or you can type it in the chat section. And within this session, I'll be breaking in two occasions, and in these two occasions I'll be addressing your concerns by going through the chat. We cannot have a chat with each and every one of you because of technical difficulties. Because of that, I would actually suggest you to type everything on the chat section, and I'll be addressing all your concerns, going through all your going through all the chats and addressing all your concerns. So having said that, let me move on to the session outcomes. This session is divided into three main areas. So in part number one, I will be taking you through the OCS exam overview, going through the nitty-gritties pertaining to the OCS exam. In part number two, I will be talking about exam techniques, which would ensure you pass the operational case study comfortably. And in the third area, the most important area, I'll be taking you through a mini mock prepared by TCS Online, and I'll be taking you through the suggested answer, which will undoubtedly help you figure out what type of answers you need to provide in the real exam. Okay, right. So the pathway to OCS are twofold. So most of you might come through the general route of CIMA, having done the OTQ exams, and another set of students are coming through the FLP program, or the Finance Leadership Program, which is also known as the exemption route of CIMA. All right, then looking at the exams, my voice is not too clear, it seems. Is that the case? Is everybody finding that to be a problem? Is my voice echoing? Mine is fine. Okay, it's clear. Right. So something wrong with your end, I guess, Koba. So that's absolutely fine, because this session is recorded. You can go through the recorded session. All right. So then looking at the exam, it's a PC based exam, and usually students are supposed to go, to an institute and do the exam. However, due to the pandemic, fine for me, right? Okay. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, you can do your exams at home as well, adhering to the guidelines provided by CIMA and Pearson. And the paper is a 3-hour paper, which consists of 4 main tasks, and the time allocation for each task is 45 minutes, and the pass mark is 80 out of 150, or 54%. Right, so that's the exam. So let's go through the overview of the exam. When it comes to the operational case study, information is provided about a fictitious company in advance as part of the pre-scene document. So I hope you would have gone through the pre-scene document as at now, because if not, it's high time you do it actually. So this time's pre-scene is based on a fictitious company which carries the name Treadcushie, a shoe manufacturer. So in the exam, you are required to address issues or questions relating to the operations of the company. So in the exam, the examiner is trying to create a real life work environment, replicate a real life work environment, and it's as if you are employed within Treadcushie. the shoe manufacturing company. Okay. And in the exam, when coming up with issues, when the examiner comes up with questions, he or she will be testing your knowledge about the company as well as the industry. So from where can you gain an understanding about the company and its industry? By going through the pre-scene document, by going through the pre-scene provided by the examiner. And on top of that, you are supposed to apply knowledge pertaining to E1, P1, and F1 related areas. So you need to have a good understanding about the syllabus content, as well as you need to have an appropriate level of understanding about the pre-scene. Those are the prerequisites which you need to achieve before you start your journey, before you start your OCS journey. So first things first, you need to know your pre-scene and you need to know your syllabus content pertaining to E1, P1, and F1 related areas. And I'll be highlighting more about these points later on. Okay, right. So that's the overview of the exam. And so in these sections, I will be talking about common problems faced by students. So most students do not know the right approach towards handling the pre-scene. So the examiner had given you a pre-scene, a document known as the pre-scene. So most students do not know how to tackle the pre-scene. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what you are supposed to do when you are trying to tackle the pre-scene. First things first, you need to know your key information. So I hope you had gone through the pre-scene document as at now. If so, you would have seen there are chunks and chunks of information in it. You need to have the ability to figure out which of the information is key and which of it is not. Okay, so most students, as I told you earlier, most students are clueless to figure this out. There's absolutely nothing to worry, because we at TCS has prepared something called the annotated pre-scene. So if you go through the annotated pre-scene, you are in a position to figure out the main points you need to understand. By understanding the main points, you can easily score marks in your case study examination. So you need to know your key information. Example, TCS operates local and overseas sales outlets. So this type of information you need to know, or you need to have in the back of your mind. And you need to have an understanding about ratio analysis as well. You have to remember the key ratios. That does not mean you need to remember all the numbers, the formulae and whatnot. What I would suggest you to do is to have a general understanding about the financial stability as well as the finance related nitty-gritties of the company. So if you look at the profitability of TCS, profitability is totally fine. Profitability is better than the industry. Our revenue is growing faster than the industry. Profitability is good. And looking at the gearing is somewhere it's 34%. So gearing is totally fine as well. And on top of that, looking at the activity ratios, the receivable days are totally fine. The inventory days are okay. However, there's a problem with regards to payable days. And because of this issue, the liquidity ratios has been affected negatively as well. So likewise, you need to have a general understanding. You need not remember all the numbers or the formulae. Okay, and at the real exam, you have to prepare yourself for possible scenarios, but you need to be open-minded. Why do you need to be open-minded? Because the examiner is trying to replicate a real-life work environment, as I told you guys earlier. So when you are working within a company, when you are employed within a company, definitely you won't know the type of tasks which will be allocated to you by your managers or the senior management. So the type of tasks which will be allocated will be based on the problems faced by the company, will be faced on the internal as well as the external dynamics of the company. So you are not in a position to predict them. So that's exactly why I'm saying you have to prepare for possible scenarios. That's all good. However, you need to be open-minded. Okay, you can't be bogged down on predictions too much. I'll be talking about these points later on as well. And remember, the scenario presented in the exam is the latest information. Yes. So you might have gone through the pre-scene. The pre-scene gives you an indication about what has happened within the company as well as the industry in the past. However, at your exam, present information will be provided pertaining to the issues faced by the company. So as I told you earlier, when going through the pre-scene document, try to figure out the main points, try to figure out or have a general understanding about ratios, and you need to be open-minded. If you adhere to these 3 steps, then the pre-scene is sorted. There's absolutely nothing to worry about pertaining to the pre-scene. Then another question which arises in the minds of most students is with regards to how to refer to information provided in the pre-scene in your answers. Okay, you can refer or cite in such a way that it adds value to the point you are presenting in the answer. So when developing your answers, you can refer to the information provided in the pre-scene, but in most instances what I've seen is most students bring in irrelevant information just to show that they had gone through the pre-scene. There's absolutely no point of doing that. Only relevant information should be provided. If you are providing an example or if you are relating to the pre-scene, it needs to be relevant to the task at hand, or else there's absolutely no point of mentioning something about the company if it's irrelevant. Okay, do not force it in to show the marker that you have studied the pre-scene. That's exactly what I said. You cannot convince the marker just because you mention something about the company. If you mention something, it needs to be related to the task at all times. And you might not understand, since this is your first case study, you might not understand how or what type of an approach you need to adhere to when referring to the pre-scene in your answers. That's why you need to go through suggested answers of mock exams. By going through the suggested answers, you would be in a position to figure out how you can bring in information from the pre-scene and inculcate it into your answers. All right. And another problem which arises in the minds of students is with regards to industry familiarization. So I said you need to, when facing this exam, you need to have an understanding about the nitty-gritties of the company as well as what happens within the industry. You are expected to be familiar with the industry. You have to be familiar with the industry for sure. However, you need not be an industry expert. Why? Because you are working at the lowest level of the organization. Okay, now at the strategic case study, you are replicating work carried out by a senior finance manager. So as a senior finance manager, you need to be an industry expert. You need to have an in-depth understanding about what happens within the industry. Why? Because as an individual working at the strategic level or reporting to the strategic level, you need to know, you need to be involved with long-term decision making. So in order to carry out long-term decision making, you need to know what the top level guys are up to. Okay, you need to have a good understanding about the industry. However, you are replicating work carried out by a finance officer at the lowest level of the organization. So you are not supposed to have an in-depth understanding about the industry. So you need not be an expert, but you need to have a general understanding about or a general level of familiarization with regards to what happens within the industry. So you can do some reading to familiarize yourself with the industry by looking at real life examples. Actually speaking, you need not do that because we had carried out an industry analysis looking at the practical situation which is relevant to the real life. So if you go through that document, then in about 5 to 10 minutes, you'd have enough amount of information about what happens within the industry. So that's another question with regards to that's another question which arises in the minds of people, students. And again, I said, when providing answers, you need to be familiar with the pre-scene, the industry, as well as you need to be familiar with how you can bring in technical knowledge which you have gained from E1, F1 and P1. So you have to prepare yourself for application of theories and concepts. So the theoretical aspects will be tested in your exam. So you might wonder, how theoretical areas can be tested, especially looking at P1 and F1 related areas. Okay. Prepare for interpretation of figures or numbers. So you don't need to carry out any calculations, because in the OTQ exams, you need to do some calculations. However, in the operational case study, or any case study for that matter carried out by CIMA, you are not supposed to do any calculations, okay, because the numbers will be provided as part of the question. So let's assume there is a question pertaining to variance analysis. So usually at the OTQ level, what you need to do is you need to remember the formulae, you need to do your own calculations and whatnot. However, in the case study exam, the numbers or the figures will be provided, or the variances will be provided, and you are expected to explain these variances or interpret these variances, and also talk about the interrelationships of variances. So as I told you earlier, give me a second, please. There's a disruption. Right. Okay. Got rid of it. So sorry about that. So as I told you earlier, you don't need to do any calculations, but you need to have a good understanding about the theoretical aspects. So for instance, there could be a question about activity-based costing. You don't need to do any calculations, but you need to understand the concept of activity-based costing, as well as the advantages and disadvantages of activity-based costing. And you need to also understand whether activity-based costing is relevant to trade cushy. So talking about information taken from the pre-scene, what I can tell you is, when you look at the standard cost cards provided, 70% of the costs are direct and 30% of the costs are overheads or indirect costs. So we have just 30% of indirect costs within trade cushy. So in such a context, recommending the implementation of activity-based costing does not make any sense. Why? Because activity-based costing is only relevant if your indirect costs are a larger portion of your total cost. So likewise, you need to understand the theoretical components, and you need to have the ability to apply these theoretical components to your question, as well as the information provided in the pre-scene. And you are not supposed to skip any topic. I've seen so many tutors telling students that certain parts can be avoided. I will not actually recommend that, because I've gone through past papers, and anything and everything which falls under these three syllabus areas can be tested. So you have to go through these areas, and do not rely on predictions, as any area can be examined. So I've seen tutors providing predictions as well. Don't rely on predictions, because when you are working within an organization, you can't predict what type of work allocations you would have to, or what type of responsibilities you would have to carry out. So that's exactly what's being replicated in your real exam. So don't rely on predictions. It's it makes no sense. Okay. Right. Okay. So having spoken about all these things, these are the main problems which comes up when a student is preparing for the operational case study. I'm going to take the first break, and I'm going to go through the chat section to figure out what type of questions I need to address. Okay. If you have any questions, you can type them now as well. So Serika Hebert is asking a question: how do we familiarize ourselves with the industry? So simply you can go through the information provided in the pre-scene. Okay, so in the pre-scene is actually divided into 4 main areas. Number 1 is introduction. Number 2, company dynamics, talks about company operations, gives us an indication about what happens within different departments, the type of leadership within the organization and whatnot. The third part is the industry analysis or information pertaining to the industry. And the fourth area is dedicated towards the financial aspects of the company. So by simply going through the industry dynamics stipulated in the pre-scene, you'd be in a position to figure out what you need to cover under industry analysis. And let me take you through the annotated pre-scene, which would help you figure out what I'm talking about. So as you can see, I've brought out all the necessary points so that you need not remember everything within the document. You just need to remember the points which I've made, and I've made my own comments as well, which makes your life easier to figure out the nitty-gritty. So let me take you to the, since you have asked the question, let me take you to the industry aspects. Give me a second, please. Yes, so as you can see, the third component is pertaining to the industry nitty-gritty. So I've just highlighted the main points and taken out the main points. If you remember these points which I've made, then everything to do with the industry is sorted. Okay, so I would actually ask you to go to our website, and you can access the free, as part of the free content, you can access this document. Okay, I hope I addressed your concern. Serika, I hope I addressed your concern. And another student is saying, I'm having a hard time with writing a lengthy answer. Okay, you're welcome, Serika. So that's totally fine. Every student, since this is the first case study, almost every student has a problem with regards to the lengths of answers and what type of content which needs to be which needs to appear as part of the answers. So as part of the third session, at the very end of this session, I will be taking you through the answers of a mini mock, which would enable you to figure out what type of answers you need to provide. And on top of that, I would suggest you to use our 5 mock exams, and if possible, seek my feedback for each and every mock exam as well, which would help you figure out what type of answers you are supposed to provide. I hope I addressed your concern as well. Okay, all right. Any other questions, guys? The floor is open for questions. Any other questions? Right, until you guys post questions, I'm gonna take you through another document where I'd show you the type of feedback which I provide. As you can see, in-depth feedback is provided, line by line feedback is provided. Even if there's some formatting error, I've highlighted that. Okay, even if the headings are not appropriate, I've highlighted these things. So you can see throughout the document, I've provided an in-depth analysis into the answer, highlighting the main points which you need to improve. And on top of that, at the very end of each and every feedback, I'll be providing your marks pertaining to each and every subtask, which will help you understand the areas which you need to really polish up. Okay, so this is the type of feedback which we provide at TCS. All right, let me check the chat once more. Okay, right, no more questions are there. So I'm gonna just take about 5 minutes to of your time to talk about the type of products which we are offering. We are offering 2 main packages, the essential package as well as the value package. Okay, so as part of the essential pack, you will have access to full pre-scene analysis videos. As I told you earlier, the pre-scene is divided into 4 main areas, and for each area I've done videos. And by accessing the free content, you would have you would be in a position to have an understanding about the type of content which we provide. Okay, so 4 videos, you'd have access to 4 videos, and you'd be getting your hands on the annotated pre-scene which I showed you a while back, and an industry analysis document will be provided. And the most important part of the product is the 5 exam standard mock exams and suggested answers. So you'll get your hands on 5 exam standard mocks. Each mock carries a time allocation of 3 hours. Okay. And by going through the suggested answers as well as the mocks, you will cover all E1, P1 and F1 related syllabus areas. That's how I've developed the questions. I've gone through I've made sure that all syllabus areas are covered. Okay. So this is what's, included as part of the essential pack, and you would get your hands on the financial analysis, top 10 likely issues, and there's an OCS familiarization kit. Actually speaking, that's exactly what I'm talking about in this session. I'm trying to familiarize you guys with the OCS exam. And on top of all these things, you would have access to a WhatsApp discussion forum where you would have students just like you, who are attempting OCS, and you can, share your thoughts as well as knowledge, ask questions, because myself and the other 2 tutors are really active on the WhatsApp group. So if you have any question pertaining to the operational case study or syllabus areas, you can raise your concerns on the WhatsApp group. And there's a pass guarantee as well. So you might be wondering what this is about. The pass guarantee entails that if by any chance you fail the exam, if you use our products, that's going to be highly unlikely. However, if you fail the exam, we will be providing all the material free of charge in the subsequent sitting. And for all this, the investment will be GBP 99. And let me take you through the value pack. And I would actually suggest to people who are coming through the FLP route or the exemption route, or the students who did not ace their OTQs, who were struggling with the OTQs, I'd suggest you to go with the value pack. Why am I asking you to go with the value pack? Because you will have access to our online mock exam platform. We had created our own mock exam platform, which actually replicates the mock exam platform which you'd see in your real exam. Okay, so it's better to get yourself accustomed to the exam situation. And on top of that, I myself will be providing professional marking and feedback on 3 mocks. So you saw the type of professional feedback which I provide. So by seeking feedback, definitely you can pass your exam. I guarantee you that. And there are theory recaps for E1, F1 and P1 areas as well. Especially these theory recaps are relevant to students coming through the exemption route, and the investment is GBP 159. All right, so having said that, let's move further with today's session. So Precious is asking a question: do you provide summarized notes of E1, P1 and F1? Yes, that's included as part of the value pack. All right, so let's move further. Your role is that of a finance officer. So as I've been reiterating throughout this session, you are supposed to play the role of a finance officer who is at the lowest level of the organization, and you are supposed to report to your finance manager or any other manager from some other department. Okay. So as the finance officer of the organization of TreadPushy, you need to have a moderate level of application and practical thinking expected for OCS. So you don't need to have a lot of practical thinking, because at the operational level, a lot of theoretical or technical areas will be tested. So you need to have a moderate level of application and practical thinking. So, and on top of that, I need to tell you, theories will be heavily tested. So the concepts as well as the theories which you learned under E1, F1 and P1 will be heavily tested. And calculations, you need not do calculations, but you need to elaborate calculations. So the numbers which are provided in your as part of your exam. And practical decision making will be extremely limited. Why? Because you are at the lowest level of the organization. You are only supposed to carry out short-term decision making, which falls under the P1 syllabus. Other than that, there's absolutely no recommendations. So you are not supposed to provide recommendations or be involved with long-term decision making. So you need to have a sound technical knowledge. That's exactly why I said E1, P1, and F1 areas are heavily tested. The theoretical components are heavily tested in your exam. Okay, right. So I spoke about how you are supposed to tackle the pre-scene, what type of methodology you need to adhere to when tackling the industry. And I said that you need to go through E1, P1, and F1 related areas. Okay, so let's try to figure out how you can attempt mock exams. So let's assume you have gone through the pre-scene, you know the industry, you know all the theoretical concepts under E1, F1, and P1. Now it's time for you to start attempting mock exams. What are you supposed to do? Attempt a minimum of 5 mock exams. Why am I telling you this? Because OCS is, as I told you earlier, OCS is highly technical. So because of that, you cannot cover all the syllabus content if you do less than 5 mocks. Okay, believe me, you need to do 5 mocks. Then you can actually relax when facing the exam. So attempt a minimum of 5 mocks. And when practicing these mocks, you have to be really serious. You have to practice under a simulated exam environment. It's better if you can use our mock exam platform, which is similar to the online platform used by SEMA, so that it helps you to get accustomed to the nitty-gritties or the technical aspects of the exam platform. And you need to be considerate about the time of the day when you are attempting your mock exams. Now, let's assume you have booked your exam at 9 a.m. So your real exam is going to happen, start at 9 and finish at 12. So it's better when attempting your mock exams, it's better if you can stick to the same time frame. Start your mock at 9 and finish it at 12. And on top of that, try to replicate the exam situation by isolating yourself when attempting these mock exams. Don't try to do it part by part. Try to attempt the mock at a stretch, allocate full 3 hours. Why am I telling you all these things? Because then it helps you with your preparation. The more prepared you are, higher the chances of you passing the exam, real exam. Okay, and you need to seek personalized feedback, especially if you are coming through an exemption route such as FLP, or especially if you had not gotten good marks, or if you struggled at the OTQ levels. It's of utmost importance that you seek personalized feedback. And practice builds thinking, speed, and confidence. So that's exactly why I want you to do these 5 mocks under exam conditions whilst practicing. And having said all these things, I'm not asking you to reproduce suggested answers in the exams. I've seen so many students who are trying to memorize suggested answers, but that's not how this examination works. Always remember, SEMA is not an academic qualification, it's a professional qualification. So in a professional qualification, you cannot memorize and pass the exam. You need to know the core concepts, and you need to apply these core concepts in your case study examination. So there's absolutely no point of reproducing suggested answers. All right. Okay, so let me take you through the examiner's report. So let's listen to the examiner. Let's try to figure out what the examiner is telling us. So let's look at tip number 1. Good answers require relevance to the requirement. I highlighted this point earlier. You need to understand the exact requirement stipulated in the question. I'll tell you how you're supposed to do it when I'm going through the mock exam. Okay, and when bringing in information from the pre-scene, again, you need to relate to, you need to make sure that you relate to the requirement, or you need to leave out irrelevant information. Okay, and you need to have a sound technical knowledge of E1, P1, and F1 areas, and you need to have the ability to apply that knowledge as well. And you need to come up with well-structured answers using paragraphs. I'll tell you how to do that as well. I'll be talking about these points later on. And you have to justify the arguments which you are making. You can't just make vague arguments. You have to always back it up with facts. You need to always justify your answers. Okay. Then before the exam, the examiner is asking you to do these things. Study all areas of the syllabus. So I've told you, I've seen tutors saying that you can leave out certain parts of, the syllabus content. That's not what the examiner is telling you. Examiner wants you to study all areas of the syllabus. Okay. And examiner wants you to apply to the scenario. So whilst going through the pre-scene analysis, you need to figure out how you can apply the information which appears in the pre-scene to the company. Okay, that's why you need to go through the annotated pre-scene which I've carried out. If you go through that, then this is sorted. You need not worry about how you are supposed to apply knowledge which is brought from the pre-scene in your answers. And the examiner is asking you to practice tasks, do mock exams and type or write full answers. I suggested the same thing a while back. I said you need to time your mock exams and do it at a stretch, just like in the real exam, because that's exactly what the examiner wants you to do. Okay, then during the exam, you have to plan your answers appropriately. Okay, most students do not know how to plan the answers. Because of that, they run out of time in most instances. So, and they are clueless about what type of content they are supposed to provide. All these things will be discussed later on in this session. So there's absolutely nothing to worry about. Okay, you have to plan your answers appropriately. And the marker, the examiner is talking about the marker as well. Marker is under strict instructions to mark answers on their merits. So there's absolutely no point of writing, chunks and chunks of information if it is irrelevant. Just because you come up with long answers, it does not mean that you get marks. The marks will be based on the quality of your answers or the content of your answers, not quantity. That's what the examiner is telling us. All right, so let's move on to the answering techniques. So I told you, you need to stick to an appropriate level of format that has been replicated in the examiner's report as well. So you need to use appropriate headings and subheadings. You'll learn how to do this when I'm going through the suggested answer of the mini mock, which I'm going to discuss in a while. And you need to come up with paragraphs when compiling your answers. And a paragraph should consist of 2 to 4 sentences, nothing less, nothing more. Okay. So let's assume you need to bring out 7 valid points in your answer. Then you need to have 7 different paragraphs. Why am I asking you to come up with, a single paragraph for each answer point? Because it makes the examiner's life easier. I've marked so many papers. So because of that, I know the stress which an examiner would feel when going through an answer where all the answer points are within one single paragraph. So in such a context, when an examiner goes through a long paragraph, the examiner finds it hard to pick points which you have made. So you are pissing off the examiner and you would end up creating a negative attitude. And because of that, you end up losing marks. So in order to avoid that, stick to the format which I'm talking about. If you are bringing in any valid point, per point, you need to have a paragraph. Okay. And a paragraph should consist of 2 to 4 sentences, nothing more, nothing less. And ideally, there should be 650 to 700 words per 45-minute task. So I said there are 4 45-minute tasks. So per task, you need to have 600 to 700 words. Okay. And let's look at time allocation. 1/3 of your time should be allocated for reading and planning, and 2/3 of your time should be allocated for typing. I've seen so many students, they read the requirement. Right after reading the requirement, they start typing their answer, and halfway through they realize that they are writing something else. They are headed in the wrong direction. So they have to delete everything again and they panic. Because of that, they run out of time. So what I'm suggesting you to do is, you have 45 minutes. That's ample time. Okay. So 1/3 of your time, 15 minutes should be allocated to read the requirement, understand the requirements, and plan your answer. When planning your answer, come up with answer plans. So let's assume within the requirement, it says, okay, discuss the merits and demerits of activity-based costing. So you need to come up with a heading which says merits of activity-based costing. Under that, in bullet points, quickly type something on the exam window itself, and the next heading should be disadvantages. Under that, just jot down the points. So after you had done that, after you had come up with an appropriate plan, you can use all the remaining time, 30 minutes of your time, to type your answers. So it's of utmost importance that you plan your answers appropriately. So spend 15 minutes to read and plan your answers, then you can type all you want. Okay, expected typing speed is a minimum of 20 words per minute. Certain students cannot achieve this, so I would actually recommend you to spend something like, if your typing speed is bad, spend something like 30 minutes a day. There are so much of software out there on Google, download a software and get to it. Okay, so that's that. And weightage of each requirement as per time allocated. So the weightages are provided in the question itself. When I'm going through the mock exam, you would understand what I'm talking about. Do not spend time on formatting. You are not supposed to work on your alignments and whatnot, okay, because these facilities are not provided in the real exam. Remember, it's always about quality of the points. I highlighted this point earlier as well. Quality wins over quantity when you are doing your OCS exam. Right, so let's look at what you need to focus on when developing answers. Before we do that, let me go through the chat section to figure out what type of questions you have posted. So a student is asking whether we have separate packages. No, unfortunately not. We have the essential pack as well as the value pack only. Right. So Veronica is asking a question. Do you only offer case study or both objective tests and case study? We are primarily focusing our attention towards the case study. However, if you need individual tutoring, we provide it at GBP 30 per hour. So Chiletso is asking a question. If there are 3 tasks, can you plan all together, then start typing, or plan per task and type? You have to, if there are 3 tasks, 3 subtasks under one single task, you have to come up with the plan for the entire answer, then start typing. Don't take it part by part. All right. Okay. So what you are supposed to do when developing answers: read the scenario first, try to figure out the most important information provided as part of the question, plot the requirements into subheadings. That's exactly what I told you earlier. Invest time to understand the requirement clearly. Yeah, I told you to read and come up with an answer plan utilizing 15 minutes of your allocated time per task. Plan the answer first. Maximum of 15 minutes of the time can be taken. Plan the answer in the answer screen itself. Don't try to come up with an answer plan on the scratch pad. Write it on the answer screen itself, then expand the points in the answer plan. So that's what you're supposed to do when you are developing your answers. Right. So some of you who had attended this session might have failed the exam previously. So first things first, you need to figure out whether you gave your best in the previous sitting or not. So you need to do your own personal reflection. And as part of that personal reflection, you need to figure out where you went wrong in the real exam. Okay, you need to diagnose the reasons first and address them this time, rather than replicating the same or repeating the same mistakes again and again. So most of the issues are pertaining to what type of answers you are supposed to provide. Okay, and most students do not know what the examiner requires out of you. So I would suggest you to refer our mini mock and suggested answers, as well as the examiner's report, which I highlighted, and I will be highlighting the going through the mini mock later on. And did you get feedback on your mock exam answer scripts previously? If not, it's recommended that you do this time, especially if you got really low marks. Okay, if you got something within 70s, that's totally fine. You can do your own preparation If you are really confident about the OTQs, then still you can do your own preparation. However, if you got really low marks, it's better to seek personalized feedback this time rather than repeating the same mistake. And based on that, you have to come up with an action plan. You have to work harder and smarter. When it comes to working harder and smarter, you can always get feedback from or guidance from the tutors at TCS. So I ask you to, if you're not part of the WhatsApp group already, I ask you to be part of it, where you can get all the guidance you need with regards to planning and whatnot. All right, then you need to avoid deflections as well. Most students try to overemphasize on exam blueprint. You need to avoid that. Most students over rely on predictions, and at the real exam they figure out that nothing came or nothing was tested in relation to the predictions. And students do too much of industry analysis, so avoid that. Just go through the nitty-gritties which I've highlighted as part of the pre-scene, as well as I've done a separate industry analysis document as well. Go through that if possible. And most students are misguided by the use of past papers, because past papers are based on totally different pre-scenes or totally different industries and companies. So for instance, this time Tredkushi is a production oriented company. If you had gone through questions pertaining to a service company, then you are misguided gravely. So in such a context, I would suggest you to go through the mock exams which is relevant to this pre-scene. And information overload is deadly as well in the real exam. So if you stick to the material which we had provided and stick to the plans which we will provide, then you can easily pass your exam. All right, having said all these things, I'm gonna shift my attention towards the mock exams. Before I do that, any questions, folks? How long does it take to get feedback if we sit a mock exam through TCS? 48 hours. So I actually provide earlier than that as well, but 48 hours is the stipulated time period. But closer to the exam, I will be providing feedback maybe in 24 hours as well. How can we join the WhatsApp group? At the very end, after I discuss the mock exams, I will be providing all this information later on. Any questions, guys? Any other questions? So until you guys post your questions, I'm going to take you through the website. So you can go to the OCS tab. All right. And in that you'd get all the so you can click here to access the free content. So the free content includes an introduction to the pre-scene analysis video. There are 4 videos, out of which we have given you access to 1 video, and the mini mock which I'm discussing today, the questions and the suggested answers appear as part of the free content. And you can go through the product packages as well. The essential pack is here, and go through the FAQs, because you will, after going through the FAQs, you are in a position to figure out what type of services we provide. Okay, so for instance, all the material which we are providing, we have given access to sample material. So going through the material, you would understand what we are covering under each and every product category and each and every product which we are providing. And the same could be said about the value pack as well. And if you want personal tutoring, you can apply for that as well. All right, so having said that, let me go back to our session. I will be taking you through the mock exam evaluation. Before that, there's a question. Right, okay, welcome. Right, so all right, so mini mock questions. Right, so there are 2 why we call this a mini mock is, in your real exam you would have 4 tasks, but in here there are only 2 tasks, and each task has a time allocation of 45 minutes each, and there are 3 subtasks each, and time allocation or the weightages are provided in here. In task number 1, there's a weightage of 50%, 25%, and 25%. And in task number 2, you can see the same type of time allocation as well. All right. So section number 1, a 45-minute question. Today is the 1st of November 2021, and TradeCushy has carried out the quarterly performance review. You might be wondering why the date is outdated, because this case study was relevant for the November sitting as well as the sitting which is coming up in February. You received the following email from the finance manager. So the subject is about training and development, budgeting, and relevant costing. So the finance manager is telling you that the board has, the company has decided to launch a special training and development session for our retail store employees. Okay, so the company is going to invest their time and effort on training and development. So you are supposed to draft a report on the steps which we need to follow in our training and development program. So you need to highlight the steps in a training and development program. E1 related area, there are 5 steps. So you need to know what these 5 steps are. If not, you can't get any marks for this area. So the time allocation is 50%, or the weightage is 50%. So out of your 45 minutes, 50% should be allocated towards coming up with the answer for this question. All right, so let's look at the answer. Oops. Sorry, right. So let's look at the answer. Okay, training and development program. You can see that I had come up with a main heading, and the main heading is I've used a bold and underlined setting, and under that you can, in order to talk about the 5 different areas in the training and development cycle, I've come up with subheadings, and I've used bold formatting for the subheading. So first things first, step number 1 is identifying training and development needs. Since we are focusing on retail store employees, we need to identify the issues with their performance and design training programs to bridge areas of underperformance. So why do we carry out training and development? To make sure that the skill set of employees improve. So first things first, we need to figure out the issues in their performance, then come up with a training, or then design a training and development program to forego the underperformance in the future. Then the second step is about setting training and development objectives. You need to set training and development objectives. These objectives should be in line with the achievement of efficiency in the outlets. So we are relating to the question. We are not generally saying that you have to come up with objectives. We are saying why we need to come up with objectives and what we need to aim when coming up with objectives. It needs to be, concerned. The objective should be linked to achievement of efficiency in the outlets. Why we are planning to carry out a training and development program focused on the sales employees. Thus, the objective should be clear, specific, and measurable. Then when it comes to planning, plans pertaining to training methods, how we are going to train them, sources of trainers, are we going to do internal training or external training, budgets, the location and providers of training, the division of responsibilities, all these things needs to be planned. Okay. Then delivering and implementing, the 4th stage, the executing of or the delivery process. This needs to be carried. We need to figure out whether we are going to go with formal delivery or informal delivery. Are we going to use internal resources or external training methods? And on top of that, during the whole process, we need to examine sessions to make sure that we are achieving our training objectives. Okay, all this is practical. So I'm highlighting the facts which were mentioned in the question, specifically focusing on sales employees rather than providing general answers. Then the 5th step is about evaluating the training and development sessions. So the whole process needs to be evaluated to track the effectiveness. We need to figure out whether the training and development sessions has been carried out in an effective manner. If there are any errors, we need to rectify them by listening to feedback from trainers and retail store staff members. So we need to seek feedback not only from retail store staff members, but from the trainers as well. All right. So that's the type of an answer you need to provide for the first part of the question, which is about the training and development program. Then I'm moving on to the second part. In that, the finance manager is talking about the budgeting styles and the level of people involved within the budgetary process. So if you had gone through the pre-scene appropriately, you would have figured out we do not have a participatory approach to budgeting. We have a top-down approach instead. So it is highlighted that it's better if we go for a participatory approach. So that's what's highlighted in the question. The finance director asked me to provide a report evaluating the benefits and drawbacks of the imposed and participative budgeting style. So what we have at the moment is a imposed style. You have to talk about the benefits and drawbacks, not just of the imposed style, but of the participative style as well. Since I'm busy with my work, could you please provide me an explanation to the above mentioned requirements? 25% of marks will be allocated. Okay, so let's go through the answer. Evaluation of budgeting style. So I've started the answer by defining what a budget is. Budgeting refers to the process of developing a quantitative plan for the future. And we can use different styles for budgeting. And we have two options, the imposed as well as the participative style. So first things first, I'm talking about the imposed style. It does not facilitate the budget holder, employees, and the operational manager to participate in the budget preparation process because it's a top-down approach. So I've started the answer by defining what the imposed style is about. Then I'm highlighting the main advantages. Main advantages are the imposed style is less time consuming. If our lower level managers lack the skill to prepare budgets, then this style is suitable. So it's less time consuming. And if our low level guys do not know how to prepare budgets, then the imposed style is better. Further, since top level managers have an overall view and the vision of the organization, they are better poised to prepare budgets. So these are the advantages of an imposed style of budgeting. Right, let's look at the disadvantages. We won't be able to get the local knowledge of operational managers. So we at TradeKushi, we have 8 different. We are selling through 9 different locations within Keyland as well as in international. We have international operations in joining European countries as well. So it's better to seek. It's better to seek the information from managers in the localities rather than somebody at the head office trying to impose the budget. So that's the main disadvantage, and I'm relating it to the information provided in the pre-scene as well. Since the budget does not consider the idea of the low-level employees, we could face resistance when implementing budgets. Yes, that's a certain. And this could also lead to demotivation among low-level employees as they would feel that their opinions are not considered or valued. So these are the disadvantages of imposed style of budgeting. Then let's move on to the participative style of budgeting. A participative style would facilitate the operational managers and the low-level employees to participate in the budget setting process. Again, I started by defining what a participative style of budgeting is. And this ensures that the company can benefit from local knowledge. So I've highlighted one of the advantages: we can benefit from local knowledge, which leads to increased motivation as well. And because of the increased level of motivation, it leads to greater commitment towards achieving these budgets. Additionally, we won't face any resistance. So I've highlighted the benefits of participative budgeting. Then the disadvantages are it's time consuming and it creates something called a budgetary slack, since low-level managers would try to set budgets which are easily achievable. So I've defined what budgetary slack is in the answer, and I've provided a general analysis. Okay, you are not expected to do this in your exam, but in our suggested answers, fully fledged answers has been provided. Because of that, I've provided a general analysis. We need to consider both benefits and drawbacks of each, and also consider TradeKushi's corporate objectives before the best style is selected. So I'm not suggesting anything. I've spoken about the pros and cons, thereby adhering to the requirement of the task. And at the very end, I'm saying we need to consider both pros and cons before we move ahead with any type of budgeting. Okay, so that's that. Then let's move on to the third area. Okay, third area of the question. It's a 25, there's an allocation of 25%. Moreover, we have received special requests from ABC and XYZ, which are well-renowned second-hand car trading companies, to sell our old delivery vehicles to them. So we are trying to sell our old delivery vehicles as per the requirement. We received quotations from them. I thought to do a cost benefit analysis before selecting a supplier. So we are about to select a supplier, and the finance manager is saying that she had carried out a cost benefit analysis. He has carried out a cost benefit analysis because the finance manager's name is Ben Newma, and I have attached all the information. In your exam, you will have access. You have to go through your reference material. I have attached all the information as part of the reference material, and the reference material is available on the next page. So let's go through the reference material to figure out the type of nitty-gritties provided. Okay, so this is an F1 related area. I said you need not do any calculations, and I also told that all the information will be provided as part of the task. That's exactly what is replicated here. So we are going to sell 20 delivery vehicles. The book value of these vehicles is $1 million. And the annual depreciation charges are $100,000. The company has no intention to replace these vehicles, so we are getting rid of them outright. And the present value of future cash flows is $1.2 million. Okay, and information pertaining to the quotations made by ABC and XYZ has been provided as well. ABC, if we sell it to ABC, we'll be selling the vehicles at the present condition for $900,000, and if we sell it to XYZ, we are selling the vehicles for $1.1 million after replacing the gearbox, and we are going to spend $150,000 to replace gearboxes in 20 vehicles. Okay, so let's look at what the requirement is. Please carry out a relevant cost benefit analysis. So this is a question pertaining to relevant costing, and evaluate the decision which we need to take, either to keep our delivery vehicles or sell them. So this question this subtask consists of two areas. Area number one is with regards to relevant costs and relevant benefits. Area number two is with regards to the type of decision which we need to take when selling these vehicles. Okay, so let's look at the answer. Relevant cost analysis. Relevant costs and revenues are those costs and revenues that change as a direct result of a decision taken. I'm starting the answer by defining the concept of relevant costing. That's how you gain marks. So the disposal or keep decision of the delivery vehicles will depend on the costs and revenues which are relevant to that decision. Okay, so what are the characteristics we need to fulfill or look at when determining whether a certain cost is relevant or not? They are future costs and revenues. If that is the case, it is considered to be relevant as per the syllabus content. Further, incremental costs are considered to be relevant as well. Okay, for future costs and revenues to be relevant must be cash flows arising as a direct consequence of the decision taken. Relevant costs do not include items that do not involve cash flows. So I've highlighted all the characteristics as per the syllabus areas. I've highlighted all the characteristics which appears under relevant costing. Okay, then I'm moving on to each and every information, because we need to stipulate whether the information provided is relevant or irrelevant to the decision. Okay, book value and depreciation. The book value is a sunk cost and would not be relevant since we have already incurred the cost of the vehicles. So that's a sunk cost, and sunk costs are irrelevant. You should already know these things. The depreciation will not be recognized as a relevant cost since it does not result in actual cash flows. So I'm saying the book value is irrelevant, and on top of that, the depreciation is irrelevant. I'm not just saying that they are irrelevant. I'm explaining as to why I have considered them to be irrelevant costs. The present value and the quotation price. Okay, The relevant cash flows under this decision is the present value, since we won't be able to obtain a value of K dollars 1.2 million if we sold our vehicles to ABC or XYZ. Yes. So what are they quoting? ABC is quoting 900,000, XYZ is quoting 1.1 million minus 150,000, which comes up to 950 million. So our present value of future cash flows is higher than that. So in such a context, it is considered to be a relevant cost. The quoted prices of ABC and XYZ will also be relevant for us, since we won't be able to get those revenues unless we sell our vehicles to them. Yes, we are not getting our these revenues unless otherwise if we sell these vehicles to these guys. So those would be incremental cash flows that are relevant. So according to relevant costing, incremental cash flows are considered to be relevant. So because of that, the quoted prices are considered to be relevant to the decision. Right. So the first part is done. Relevant cost benefit analysis was supposed to be carried out. I carried that out. Now I'm gonna focus on the second part of subtask number 3, evaluation of the decision. It is financially beneficial for us to use the vehicles over its useful period, since we could generate an additional positive cash flow of $250,000, considering the best quotation provided by XYZ, which is 950,000 after reducing the cost of replacing the gearbox. I've done the numbers in here. So XYZ has quoted a price of 1.1 million. From that, we have to deduct the gearbox replacement costs coming up to 150,000. So the best quote which we have gotten is 950,000. However, when you look at the present value of future cash flows, it's 1.2 million, higher than the quote provided by XYZ. All right, so that's the answer for part 1. Okay, so likewise, I'm not going to take you through section number 2 because I think we have taken too much time. So I hope you understood what type of answers you are supposed to provide. As I told you earlier, theoretical knowledge needs to be there. You need to stick to appropriate formatting. As you can see, I have not exceeded the lines, the sentences within a paragraph. I've broken down all my answers into paragraphs, which makes the examiner's life easier when providing marks. So you need to adhere to this type of structure when providing your answers. And in question number 2, the areas which are tested are with regards to IAS 16, property, plant and equipment, digital costing and KPIs. Again, in the reference section, the numbers are provided. And as per IAS 16, you are supposed to talk about the type of costs which can be capitalized and the type of costs which needs to be sent to the profit and loss statement. Okay, so you can go through the suggested answer in order to understand the nitty-gritties highlighted in the mock exam. All right, so having said that, the floor is again open for questions and answers. So would that answer score top marks? Definitely, because all the concepts had been elaborated or defined, and on top of that, all the requirements of the tasks had been addressed. Any questions, guys? Any questions? Welcome. Any questions? So before you post any questions, whilst you are posting your questions, let me take you through the information so you can contact us via our website, via email as well as WhatsApp. So, so many people were asking about how you can join the WhatsApp group. Just drop me a message and I'll send you a link, and through that link, you can join the WhatsApp group. And you can also follow us on our social media handles as well: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. When we are starting each and every session, we upload videos to YouTube, which should enable you to figure out the nitty-gritties of the pre-scene and whatnot. All right. So having said that, any questions? Welcome. Are these videos on YouTube now? Yes, out of the 4 videos, only 2 are on YouTube. If you want to get your hands on all 4 videos, you need to purchase a paid product. Any other questions? All right. So before I, conclude the session, let me thank you all for joining in. I hope you guys, this session was actually beneficial for you, because I tried to highlight the points made by the examiner, and on top of that, I try to highlight the main problems faced by students, and on top of that, I took you through a mock exam as well. And hopefully you gain something out of this session. And if you want further support, I would ask you to join our WhatsApp group, as well as follow us on social media. And on top of that, I would recommend you to purchase our products as per your requirements as well. Okay, so concluding thought: approach OCS as an opportunity to learn rather than exam to pass. That's the best way to actually pass the exam. Okay, so having said that, thank you very much, guys, and please expect an email from us, because there's a small surprise, and I'm not going to tell you about it right now, but by looking into the email, you would figure out what the surprise is about. And I will be sharing the recorded session of a recorded version of this session as part of the email. And on top of that, I'll be sharing this document with you guys as well. And having said that, if we don't, it was quite beneficial. Thanks, guys. Thank you for the positive feedback. All right. So thank you very much for joining in, guys. If there's anything, please contact us through WhatsApp. See you and good night. All the best with the exam.